Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar on reducing the barriers, making your documents accessible. Thank you for joining us. I am Christine Irons, and I will be presenting the webinar. I'll start by telling you a little bit about myself and the company I work for, and then we'll jump into the webinar after that. So, I'm a computer instructor and courseware designer. I've been working with JN Software and CompuEase now for about 2.5 years. And before that, I worked at York University in Toronto, actually, for a couple of decades, and basically doing the same thing. I was an instructional designer and trainer and learning specialist. Then I moved back to Ottawa, and right away just started working for CompuEase and JN Software. Best move I ever made. Absolutely loving working for them. Great company to work for, great company to take courses with. And we always like to throw a little bit of tidbit of information about ourselves. So I am the lead singer of an Ottawa-based SOS, the ABBA Experience. So we put on shows, ABBA shows. I'm the blonde. We actually have done some pretty big shows. We travel around Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, basically Ontario, putting on the shows, but we just haven't done it lately, last 6 months. I guess nobody has really been performing lately. But when we get back to it, after this is all over, maybe we'll catch you at one of our shows. Okay, so before we begin, you guys connected using Ring Central, and if you've taken any courses with us or past webinars, you will be familiar with Ring Central, but if you haven't used it before, this is your first time. I wanted to point out that if you mouse over the bottom of your screen, you'll get a little sort of a dark gray bar like you see here, and there's a chat button on the right. We promote questions. We would love it if you throw in some questions, which I will definitely get to. It's just that what I'll do is I'll teach the webinar first, and at the very end of the webinar, I will get to the questions then, so we don't make it too disjointed. But if you think about it during the webinar, throw it in the chat. If you want to wait till the end of the webinar, I'll give you some time to throw your chat messages in. Also, by the way, with that chat, if you're having any technical issues, we have Melanie on right now, and Melanie can help you out with any technical issues you have. So just direct your questions to Mel, and she'll help you out. And if anything happens during the webinar, you disconnect, maybe your internet drops, just go back to your email. You can connect again with your email, and if you happen to dial in using your phone, just dial the number again and rejoin. So no problem at all. It's not like a one-time connect kind of thing. Also, after the webinar, you can watch the webinar again if you want to go back and review any information, because we do post the webinar on our YouTube account. Usually it's up within about 24 hours, but you will definitely receive an email with a link for the webinar since you had joined the webinar. Okay, so just a little note on who JN Software and CompuEase are. They're actually sister companies, and they provide training throughout Canada. So the way it works is JN Software, it's been around since 2002, and they provide training to all of Canada other than Ottawa and the Quebec area. CompuEase, if you're taking training in the Ottawa and Quebec area, you'd be going through CompuEase. The rest of Canada would be JN Software, but they are sister companies. So they basically provide the same courses, the technical courses, the professional courses. JN Software provides online public classes, always with a live instructor, so you'll never have a pre-recorded class. It's like you're actually in the classroom because you can hear them ask questions, you can ask questions. So online public classes with a live instructor, private online and on-site training. So if you want an instructor to come to your site to provide training, they do. They also provide consulting and database development services. And CompuEase, who's been around since 1988, provides on-site public training at our downtown Ottawa training center. So we actually have a facility in Ottawa that you can come to. Actually, we have a couple of facilities, one brand new gorgeous facility. So we provide training there, but we also provide one-on-one and group training either at that facility, or we can come to your location and provide training there. Very, very flexible. So what kind of sets us apart from the other companies? First of all, we have very fast quality customer service. Like, the turnaround time is really fast. I was surprised when I started with this company how on the ball they are at answering the emails, answering the questions, getting information back to you. It's amazing. And all the trainers that we have working are highly skilled, experienced professional trainers. And one of the really cool things about CompuEase and JN software is your class is guaranteed to run. So if you register for a class, even at a slow time of the year where it could be that you end up being the only person enrolled in the class, they won't cancel on you. So you can guarantee that your class will run, which is cool. And the other really neat thing is that we offer a learn or come back free policy on all our public classes. I mean, that's amazing. We also offer 24/7 after training support for all of our software training. So what will happen is you'll take a technical course with us and you'll get an email with a voucher that you have a certain amount of time to trigger the voucher. And then after you trigger it, you'll have 30 days of 24/7 free support. And by the way, we offer both technical and professional skills training. So things like business development skills, time management skills, communication skills, things like that. So both technical and professional skills. And we now offer a 20-minute consultation, a free 20-minute consultation. So because you're part of this webinar, you can set up a time to talk to us about your needs. So we'll identify your strengths and where your gaps are, and we can make suggestions for the courses that you could take, the levels, because we get a lot of questions about that. You know, for something like a technical course, should I take the Excel level 1 or should I go right to Excel level 2? It could be the soft skills, like the professional skills training. But it might not just be training. It could be that you need consultation services, database development services. We have blog articles, we have YouTube tips, lots and lots of things we can suggest. And it's pressure free. That's the one thing about this company, is they don't pressure you. So when you're talking to somebody, you never have that feeling of being pressured into taking something. This is absolutely free. We love to talk to you. And we'll just make suggestions, totally up to you. And I would take advantage of it. We've had a lot of people take advantage of this. So one of the big bonuses of you attending this webinar. Okay, so let's get into the actual webinar on accessibility right now. Accessibility, first of all, what's covered in this webinar? Its screen will change. Let's try this again. Okay, so we're going to cover, first of all, what is accessibility? So how can you make sure you comply with accessibility if you don't really know what the term accessibility means? So we're going to go through that first. What does accessibility mean? And then we'll get into the acronyms. Acronyms. We're throwing acronyms all the time. So if you're dealing with accessibility, you're hearing things like AODA, ACA, WCAG. I mean, what do all those mean? I'll decipher them for you. Then there is a really broad range of accessibility, and it's usually narrowed down into 4 major categories of accessibility. So I'll narrow it down for you to the 4 main categories, what you should consider when you're creating your accessible documents. And then I've chosen because our focus really is Word, Excel, and PowerPoint specifically, what I've done is I've chosen a feature in each application, which I think will go a really long way in making your documents accessible. There are so many things you can do to make your documents accessible. Like, we offer that accessibility training course, which I'll talk about probably throughout the webinar, but I'll mention it at the end as well. It's a 2-day course on accessibility. So you can imagine all the things that go into making your document accessible. I've chosen three, what I think are really good topics. So I'll show you hands-on in Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. And then I'll also cover tips for converting your documents to accessible PDFs, because you don't want to do all the work, on a Word document to make it accessible, then convert it to PDF and find out that Acrobat has stripped all the accessibility, or Word has stripped it because you haven't converted it properly. So we'll talk about that as well. Okay, so before we begin, what is accessibility? What does it actually mean? I searched the internet. I searched for a long time trying to come up with a really good definition of accessibility. And I think I finally found one. I can't remember if I kind of put this together piecemeal or if I actually found a site that had this definition, but I think this is a pretty good definition. So it's creating communities, workplaces, and services that enable everyone. Now, really, I should bold everyone. I should make it all capitalized. Everyone to participate fully in society without barriers. So it's the experience of users that might be outside that narrow range of your typical user that people talk about, who will access the internet or your documents a little bit differently than you expect. So let's get into the acronyms. What is AODA? AODA stands for Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. So AODA is legislation that came into force in 2005. So it's actual legislation. And I like this, by the way, this slide breaking down the barriers by 2025. So it's legislation that came in 2005. It's been around for 15 years, and it sets a clear goal and time frame to make Ontario accessible by 2025. So what's been happening is legislation has been rolling in over the last few years in stages, and almost every year we have to meet higher and higher standards and requirements. So AODA uses the same definition of disability as the Ontario Human Rights Code. So it includes both visible and non-visible disabilities. And it applies to all levels of government, as well as private and non-profit sectors, this legislation. And you'll hear, if you ever look at the legislation, there's a lot about the legislation online if you want to read about it, but you'll hear them refer to employees a lot. Who's responsible for accessibility? How big do you have to be, or how small do you have to be? Employees means full-time, part-time, seasonal, contract workers. It basically, if you pay somebody, they're an employee. And the government considers large organizations and small organizations. So 1 to 49 would be considered a small organization, 50 and above is a large organization. But in any case, the legislation is basically the same for both, which I'm going to get into. The only difference is I found that the small organizations lagged behind by about a year. So if there was a law that maybe pertaining to websites, which you had to follow on websites, for large organizations, there'd be an extra year before the small organizations had to comply. That was basically it. But do you realize that 1 in 7 people in Ontario have a disability? And in Canada, more than 1 in 5 people identify as having a disability. And if you think about it, the number is anticipated to rise as our population ages. And currently, there are 3 provinces that have provincial laws around accessibility. So Ontario is one with the AODA, Manitoba, and Nova Scotia. And British Columbia, actually, they just proposed the British Columbia Accessibility Act. Well, not just proposed it, it was in 2018. So you'll probably hear about that coming into effect soon as well. But no matter where you live, what province you live in, a barrier-free environment, including access to information, is just a fundamental human right. So with the AODA, they did identify 5 accessibility standards. Just to give you a background, we're focusing specifically on the digital part of the accessibility, but to give you an idea, they identified in the legislation customer service, accessible customer service. So making sure that customers with disabilities can receive the same service in the way that customers that don't have disabilities. Transportation, so making transportation accessible for people to go to work, enjoy shopping and entertainment. Information and communications, which is what our focus is on. So access to information, making it accessible, whether it's websites, textbooks, business information. Making public spaces accessible, so to access things like recreational trails, service counters, parking lots. And then the last one is employment, so helping organizations make accessibility a regular part of recruiting and supporting employees with disabilities. So there are the 5 areas specifically. We will be covering information and communications. That's our focus today, the digital world. So like I said, the legislation has been rolling in since 2005, but 2 years for information and communication really stand out. These are what are going to be really important to you with your digital documents and your websites. There's actually a lot of overlap with website legislation and like how it pertains to your documents, like your Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. So beginning in 2014, that was a big year. 2014, the law states that any new public websites and significantly refreshed websites, we'll talk about that in a second, and any web content posted after January 1st, 2012 must meet WCAG guidelines. So what's WCAG? W-C-A-G. So WCAG are the guidelines for web pages for things like how big fonts should be, what the contrast ratio should be, like how to make your videos and your audios accessible and things like that. So it's for your websites. But if you think about it, you also post documents on your website. So anything posted on websites have to meet WCAG guidelines. And even if it's not a document posted on a website, maybe it's a document you've sent out by email. You've distributed it some way. If somebody comes to you and requests an accessible version of that document, you must be able to provide an accessible version to the best of your ability. I mean, that's why you would take the training. You'll never make a document 100% accessible, and the range of disabilities is huge, but you must provide it in an accessible format. So first of all, what is a new public website or a significantly refreshed website? So you have a new web address, or you have a new look and feel to your website, or you've changed the way users navigate around it. or you've made major updates or changes to the content. So that's what they meant. And that was in 2014. So up until now. And now the next year that's very significant is beginning in 2021. And that's coming pretty quickly. Starting in January 2021, all public websites, not just new or refreshed, all public websites and web content posted after January 1st, 2012 must meet WCAG guidelines. The level AA that you're seeing there, there's a single A, double A, and triple A. Triple A will come into effect by 2025. But I'll tell you, the double A, looking through it, it covers almost everything. When you get to triple A, there's not much more. It's just a few extra guidelines. So you have to meet very strict guidelines. And again, distributed documents on request. So if somebody asks for a document in an accessible format, you must provide it. So these are the laws. So then what is ACA? This is a bit newer. I'm not sure if a lot of people have heard of it, but I have been getting questions about it. Accessible Canada Act, that's what it stands for. This is a little bit newer. So the Accessible Canada Act, it's a new law by the Government of Canada as of June 2019. And what they did is they consulted with Canadians from 2016 to 2017 to find out what an accessible Canada means to them. And then they're creating legislation for all of Canada to abide by. Because if you think about it, only 3 provinces right now have legislation. And we want to create a barrier-free Canada. So this is really going to help. So we're going to create a barrier-free Canada, and specifically the ACA is wherever Canadians interact with federal jurisdiction like banking, telecommunications, transportation industries, Government of Canada itself, all my Ottawa friends out there in the government, okay? But the thing is, and I think what's confusing people is, well, we have AODA and we have ACA. What does that mean? What do we follow? What guidelines do we follow? It's not really like that. And if you read anything about this legislation coming in for ACA, when it comes to digital documents, they refer to WCAG. So everything that I would teach you for accessibilities, that I would make sure you're following everything that WCAG covers for, at least for your digital documents, you will be absolutely fine with ACA because it's not like they're going to override AODA. So our focus is information and communication technology. So can I give you some examples of accessibility? So remember I said I was going to break it into 4 major categories, 4 areas that we have to consider when we're creating our documents. And I was thinking, rather than me tell you the 4 main areas that we might have to consider with disabilities, just wondering if any of you out there can name some. So I have my chat window open and I'm just checking. I see we have a couple of participants here. Oh, okay, we've got visual. Oh, there's one. So visual. This could be somebody that's blind, or it could be low vision. They could have cataracts, color blindness. That's a big one. We have to consider color blindness. So that type of disability, we would have to consider things like screen readers. And a lot of people actually use screen readers that read their documents to them. And I'm going to mention it again when I show you the Word documents. We'll be talking about screen readers then. Actually, I have an example of what a screen reader sounds like, which is kind of cool. They use magnifiers to zoom in on their screens. So you don't want to put information on the far left and the far right where they have to pan back and forth because they're zoomed in, and it becomes really frustrating and irritating. So a lot of things you have to consider with visual. Can you think of another consideration for documents? And I remember learning about accessibility, and I know there's at least one that it didn't occur to me. And even think about PowerPoint. Passwords and other security features. Oh, you know what, Chanel? That limits access to documents. That's actually a really good feature or mention, because when people type in, well, first of all, when people type in passwords, you get all the asterisks. I don't pronounce it properly, which could be an issue, especially when you're dealing with vision, limiting access to documents. Yeah. But if you're thinking about, if you think about disability, so you have people that are blind or limited sight, what else could be a limitation that somebody experiences? Audio. Yeah, audio is one. So auditory. Now, a lot of people create their PowerPoint presentations with narration. So if somebody isn't in your PowerPoint presentation, they'll put it up on the website. It's got your narration going. And if there's somebody that can't hear properly, hard of hearing, they can't hear it. So you want to use things like closed captions, offer transcripts. So we have visual, we have auditory. The other two are a bit tougher. Those are the first two I get all the time. Okay, I'll give these ones to you. Clues. How about moving around? Or if you've had a brain injury. Mobility, yeah. Physical mobility. So motor, yep. So things like arthritis or carpal tunnel. I actually have a lot of friends with carpal tunnel. So they'll use things like keyboard alternatives, adaptive mouse, voice control, eye tracking devices. So you want them to not have to move around your screen as much. So I mentioned earlier things like if you're creating an online form, you can do that in Word, you can do that in Excel. The labels for your form controls, so where it says first name and then you have a text box to type first name, you want to keep them close together. You don't want the labels all down the left and the form controls all down the right, where somebody has to mouse back and forth and back and forth. Like little things like that you have to consider. And then this is the one that I said I didn't really consider it for documentation. Cognitive, like learning disabilities, ADD, dyslexia, autism, like that's a huge range. First of all, they can use any or all of these adaptive tools above. Plus, you have to think about making your documents readable, like understandable, worded in a way that it's understandable for somebody maybe with a learning disability. And some of the tips that we give you in the courses, we actually get into that. Tips about the way you should write, the grammar you should use to make it understandable. So there is a lot that actually goes into making your documents accessible. But these are the four major categories that we do have to consider. So just a couple of examples, because I always think, like I like to see examples, put yourself in somebody else's shoes kind of thing. So somebody with cataracts, as an example, or low vision, if they were to look at an image like a photograph that you see on the left, especially an image that doesn't have very high contrast, or text, you can see that white box on the right with text. If there's not a lot of high contrast in your photo, they may see something like that. Everything sort of blends in. So you do have to consider contrast, using high contrast colors. And I'm going to show you in Excel at the end of this presentation. I'm going to show you some charts in Excel that gives you a really good example of what I'm talking about with contrast. And I'm going to give you a little trick too to check your Excel charts with contrast. Or somebody that is colorblind. The most popular color blindness is popular. It makes it sound like it was something chosen, but most common is red-green color blindness. So color blindness actually affects 1 in 12 men. So if you create diagrams or charts where the only thing to describe what they're seeing in the chart is the color, you're going to lose a huge percent of people that are reading your document. So like this is an example of cells. They're labeled with fluorescent marker colors to show the different structures. But this is what somebody who's red-green colorblind would see. There's no way without any kind of labels or anything or any kind of descriptions that they can look at that and understand what you're talking about. And one of the big things that we teach when we're teaching word accessibility is, like I said, a lot of people use screen readers to read their documents to them. I don't know if you've ever heard a screen reader before. JAWS is, I would say, probably the most popular screen reader, but it's a very expensive screen reader. It's been around the longest. It seems to do the best job at screen reading, but there are a lot out there. There are even free ones. Like if you're interested, I think there's one called NVDA, N as in Nancy. I don't know how easy it is to understand me, but NVDA, you can actually install this. It's open source, and then you can get it to read things like your documents and your computer commands to you. But there are certain things that you have to do in your document to make it more readable for a screen reader. And I'm going to just give you, I'll play this for maybe 20 seconds just to make sure that, or just to give you an idea of what it sounds like. I was just making sure that my computer sound is on. So here, let me play this for you. It's going to be a bit blurry because it's loading at full screen.
Heading level 1, pick your perfect beach paradise. Left parent example taken from http://www.expedia.com/daily/theme/vacation/beach.ask right parent. So many beaches, so little time. You want sunny and sandy but how do you choose from there? That depends on what you'd like to do. Here are a few ideas to get you started. Bullet love the nightlife. Consider link Cancun and link.
Okay. Now that gives you an idea of what a screen reader sounds like. And I don't know if you noticed, but when it read out the link as an example, it reads your hyperlinks like out letter for letter. So it would say https://www dot whatever slash whatever slash. So as an example, one of the things that we teach you in the course is don't put web links in your documents like that. There is a way in Word, Excel, and PowerPoint that you can actually put text for your link. So if you were directing people to the JN software website, you would have something like text that says JN software website. And that's what it would read. It would say link JN software website, and then they can click it and go to the website. You know, it's little things like that that you have to consider. So what is our goal? No, you can't see me, but I'm putting my thumb up in the air like her. What's the goal? Design documents to work with common adaptive tools and techniques. Make them reasonably accessible from the outset. Now you have a choice. You can work with one document, and if somebody requests an accessible format, you can make that document accessible and send it to them. I would do it right from the beginning, make it accessible from the beginning, consider everything we teach you in the class. But you could also make two versions of the document. So you could have like your regular document with all the frills and everything, and then you can have an accessible version of the document. And the reason I said with all the frills is one of the things that you should consider if you are giving a document to somebody that has ADD or something like that, the more design and extra stuff you thrown in to make it look pretty can be really overwhelming to somebody with ADD or a brain injury or, you know, anything like that. So you could make an accessible version and a non-accessible version. It's just that you have to remember to keep both of them up to date. So you're updating two documents. And then adapt them promptly if a more specific request is received, because I told you there's a huge range that we have to consider with accessibility. So big thing, involve the people who need the accommodation in exploring solutions. So if somebody asks for an accessible version of your document, work with them, ask them what they need. It's not that everybody needs a size 14 font. You might come across somebody that says, I need at least a size 18 font, or I need really high contrast. So work with them and find out what they need. So can't a computer do this for me? Nope. Well, not everything anyway. You've got to remember that there's a lot of human judgment involved. So your computer doesn't understand the content of a document. For example, if you were to put a photograph of penguins in your document, Microsoft has created this thing. Well, I don't know if you've heard of alternative text. Another thing that we teach with documents is when you put an image in your document, there's a way of creating alternative text, or called alt text, where it describes the image. So you don't see the alternative text, but a screen reader will read it. So if somebody can't see your photograph, it will read what the photograph is about. And what Microsoft has done with the newer versions of Word, Excel, and PowerPoint is it comes up automatically with alternative text for the images that you put into your documents. But the thing is, it doesn't understand why you're putting the photos in. So if you put a photo of penguins in, it might put something like penguins. And maybe for some reason the photo you put in has nothing to do with your description. So you know what? Penguins might be good enough for you. But you might need something like 3 penguins, a bonded pair, and their chick, because it has to do with the content of your document, and there's a reason why you're actually putting that photo in there. Only you understand that. And there is a thing called an accessibility checker that you can run in Word and Excel and PowerPoint. They're built in, and it checks the accessibility of your document. We'll show you how to use that. But even accessibility checkers, first of all, they don't check everything. And second of all, accessibility checkers can be tricked. Okay, so it's good to run the accessibility checker, but I would still, myself, go through the document and I would have a checklist. Oh, and that's one thing, by the way. We've created these tip sheets. So if you take the accessibility course, you'll come away with Word, Excel, and PowerPoint tip sheets with check boxes that you can just keep on your desk. So when you create a document, you can go through this little checklist to make sure that you've checked the key areas that really you should make sure are covered to make your document more accessible, which I think is so handy. It's a great checklist. Okay, so I told you I'd take you over to Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, and I'll show you a feature in each of those that these are great features that you should consider in each. So let me get out of the presentation. I should have them loaded in the background. Yeah, okay. I'm going to start with Word. Now, the feature that I chose to teach you Not only is it probably one of the best features you should focus on for screen readers, but even for yourself, what I'm about to teach you, if you don't know this, this is going to help you so much when you create your Word documents for yourself. Now, obviously, I don't have the time to go into teaching you all the ins and outs of this feature. We could show you in the class, but I'll introduce it to you, show you how to apply it, but it's called styles. So styles is a way of formatting your text. And I know even to this day, a lot of people, when they want to format their headings, for example, so here I have a document structure heading. I have a subheading called headings. I have another subheading called lists. So these two are subheadings under the main heading document structure. I know a lot of people will select a heading when they want to format it, and they'll go up to the format area of the ribbon and they'll start clicking, right? Bold, italics, underline, different font sizes, that type of thing. This actually is not the best way to format. If you do it this way and somebody uses a screen reader to read your document, what happens is, suppose you had a 500-page document that you've written that you have headings throughout your document, and they want to read a certain area of your document. They want to be able to jump to that area of your document. If you have not used heading styles, you've actually manually formatted your document. That person has to get the screen reader to read their document right from the beginning, word for word. This could be 300 pages of reading before they actually get to the area that they need to focus on. Imagine how painful that can be. But if you apply what's called heading styles to your headings, screen readers are set up to detect heading styles. Heading 1 for main headings, heading 2 for subheadings, that type of thing. It detects your heading styles and it will read out the headings to the user, and then the user can choose to jump to a specific heading and it will jump to that area of your document. Sorry, Chanel, I just saw your message. Is my screen still blurry? My Word document, or was it just reading out of the that screen reader? Because the screen reader was blurry. The Word document's blurry. Oh. Sorry, I have no idea why the I don't know why the Word document's blurry. It's absolutely sharp on my screen. I apologize for that. Maybe with the recorded version of this, if you want to refer to it when it goes up on YouTube, there'll be a clearer version of it. So I'll try to describe things very well as I'm talking about them here. Yes, so if you apply heading styles, the screen reader can read out the heading styles. The heading styles that I'm talking about are up here on the home ribbon. They're about halfway down the home ribbon. So you see heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. So what I can do is I can apply a heading 1 to a main heading. I can select it, click on heading 1, and it applies a whole bunch of formatting. Now, don't worry about what the formatting looks like because you can modify it. So you can say, no, heading 1, I want it to be bigger, bolder, red, whatever, which obviously we'll teach you. I'll click on the subheading here and I'll apply a heading 2. I'll click on another subheading here, apply a heading 2, and you work through your document and you apply heading 1s to main headings, heading 2s to subheadings, and as long as you've done that, your screen readers will read out the structure of your document to the user, and then they can jump from heading to heading to heading. It's almost like it creates a table of contents. This, I would say, out of all the features I could teach you in Word, this would be the biggest one for a screen reader. Okay, okay, put your question in, for sure. Put your question in, and as soon as I finish with the other 2 applications, I will get to your questions, so don't forget it. Okay, I will move to Excel. Now, the feature I chose to show you in Excel is charts, creating charts out of your data, creating a visual out of your data. So this chart is an example. There are a couple of problems with this chart. Now, there's a legend to tell you what each color means, but if somebody that has color blindness is looking at this, if they look at these columns, they cannot tell which is which. It doesn't matter if they have the legend. There's no labeling here, especially the red-green color blindness, because we're using the red-green bars. The other issue is a lot of people that have color blindness or low vision, what they do is they turn off their, or they turn on, I guess, their color contrast. So it's almost like making it a grayscale. And if you're using Windows 10, Windows 10 offers the ability with a shortcut key to flip your computer to grayscale and flip it back. So if you've created a chart or you've put a picture in Word, even just a picture, and you want to see what it would look like in grayscale, and if it makes sense, you can use the Control Windows, your Windows key, and C to flip it to grayscale, and I'll show you here. So I'll do a Control Windows C, and keep your eye on that chart. I don't know how blurry it is for you, but hopefully you'll see what I'm talking about. So Control Windows C, turn this to grayscale, and those colors, you can hardly tell the difference in the grays. There really is no contrast. So let me put it back. So the Control Windows C. I'll flip over to another sheet with the same chart in an accessible format. So it's the same chart, different colors, and we'll show you there are websites that you can actually go to find out what colors are accessible, what colors work together, what colors don't work together. But these colors work together well for color blindness, and if it's flipped to grayscale, I'll show you. If I do the Control Windows C. So now you can see a dark gray, a medium gray, and a light gray. Not only that, but they haven't just left it at that. They've actually labeled each column. So you know this one is Windows, this one is Linux, this one is Mac. Okay, so I'll do my Control Windows C. Another one, a line chart here. So again, they've used colors that are not great for color blindness. They're not really different intensities and brightness. And again, there are no labels. It's just a legend, and it relies on people knowing, matching up the colors or the brightnesses. So watch this, Control Windows C. Yeah. If I had started you off this way, without even showing you the colors, you would not be able to figure out what line was what. So let me show you an accessible version. So not only did they use better colors, but when you turn it to the grayscale mode, you can see dark, medium, and light. Again, though, if it's blurry on your end, I don't know if you'll see that. I can definitely see it on my screen, but they didn't just rely on that. They put labels in, and you can see that they actually made the lines different. So there are dashes, there are dots, there are solid lines. So there's so many different ways that you can label your chart without, to make it accessible. Oh, this looks better than the Word doc. Well, that's interesting. Huh. Okay, well, let's see what PowerPoint looks like. I'll show you PowerPoint. So this is actually one of the slides that I was showing you in the other PowerPoint presentation. It was a good one to show this to you. PowerPoint, when you add things to PowerPoint, and when I mean add things, everything on a PowerPoint slide is a floating object, even text. So a title, if I click on this title, it's actually in a text box. This title here is a text box. This text is in a text box. Each of these images is its own object. That's the way PowerPoint works. And what happens is a screen reader reading your PowerPoint presentation reads these objects in the order that you added them to the slide. And you don't always add these things in the order that you would actually read it out to an audience. So for example, when I set up this slide, I did put the title first. I then put cataracts and then this text box. But before I started inserting images, I thought, well, I'm inserting text boxes. I'll do these text boxes here. Then I inserted an image. And I'm going to show you a trick here. There's a way of loading a screen where you can see what order you've added the objects. It's on your home ribbon. It's way down the end to the right. There's a button that says select. And it's the selection pane that you want, selection pane. So over here, and it reads from bottom up. So the very first thing a screen reader would read here is Title 5. Now I'm going to click on Title 5 over here on the right, and it selects the title. And there's a way of going and renaming these. I actually go in and rename all the objects on my slides so that they make more sense than picture 1, picture 2. You'll never remember which is which. But as you click on them, they highlight them. So there's Title 5. That's what gets read first. If I click on Text Placeholder 6, okay, then it moves on and reads cataracts, which is good. Then the next one, okay, that's all right. Then it goes on to here. Then what I want it to do is go on to this picture here. But what it's going to do is move to the text over here. Red, green color blindness, then the images, then it goes back to picture 2, then picture 3. So this is not in the order that I want the screen reader to read. So what you can do is over here on the selection pane, you can drag and drop things around so they're in the proper order for a screen reader. It has no effect on how you view your slide here. So I know that I want picture 2 and picture 3 to come right after content placeholder 7. So what I would do is I would drag picture 2 above content placeholder 7, and then I would drag picture 3 above picture 2. So now if I start from bottom up, I have my title, my cataracts placeholder, the images from WebAIM. Oh, and by the way, WebAIM is a great, great, great website for accessibility. Then it's picture 2, picture 3, then it goes on to the next placeholder, picture 4, picture 5. Now it's in a proper reading order for a screen reader. So you know, you don't think about this when you're creating your PowerPoint slides. And then when you make your documents accessible, actually, I'll go back to Word to show you. And don't worry if Word's blurry. You don't need to see the document for this. But when you make your documents accessible and then you want to convert them to a PDF, which we do a lot, you've got to make sure that you convert them in a way that it retains all the things that you did to make them accessible. And there are several ways to save your document as a PDF. The way that I used to do it, until I found out it's not a good way, is called printing to PDF. I don't know if you've ever done this, but in a document, what you can do is you can go up to File, Print, and up at the top where your printer is, you can actually choose Adobe PDF. And then when you click print, Word asks you to save your document. It doesn't actually print it on the printer, it converts it to PDF. I used to do that until I found out that is the worst way you can do it when it comes to accessibility, because what it does is it strips most of all that work that you did to make your document accessible, and then suddenly your PDF is not accessible. The best way to save it, if you have the full version of Adobe Acrobat installed, what happens quite frequently is in your Word, your PowerPoint, and Excel, you have an Acrobat ribbon up at the top here. So I have an Acrobat ribbon, and there's Create PDF. You can do it this way, but don't worry about it, because if you don't have that ribbon, it's not a big deal. You can also go to File, Save As, and then of course you browse for wherever you want to save it. But when you're in the Save As dialog box, down at the bottom, you're not saving it as a Word document, you're converting it to a PDF. If you do it this way, it actually retains just about everything that you did for accessibility. Plus, if you've applied those heading styles throughout your document, when it converts it to a PDF, we could show you in a PDF, it creates a navigation pane on the left where people can navigate your PDF by clicking through your headings and jump to the areas in the PDF that they want to jump to. So whatever you do, don't print a PDF. Okay, now I'm going to get to your questions in 1 second. I'm just going to wait to see if anything else comes in. And while I'm waiting, I see, I see Chanel, you had that question about styles. So while we're waiting, I'm just going to quickly bring you over to, you know what, I'll start on the JN Software webpage. Like I said, they're sister companies, so we offer the same courses. I'll show you where you access them on CompuEase right after I do this. But on the JN Software site, you can narrow it down by your software training, like your technical skills training, or like I said, they provide professional skills training. Or you could just go to generally courses, which is basically everything. So I'll just click on courses. And then you could scroll down the list of courses. There's a huge list of courses. There's accessibility as an example. So if I click on accessibility, we offer the Creating Accessible Documents in Microsoft Office. That's the 2-day course. And there's one coming up September 28th and 29th. And then another one in December and another one in February. They run frequently, these courses. We have one for creating documents in Visio, accessible documents in Visio, or if you want just specifically Word, you can request them. But the 2-day accessibility course is great. And then what you can do is you can go over and click the Register Now button. And when you click it, it takes you to a landing page, which gives you the entire outline. You can look through all the topics. Over here on the right, you can choose the date you want. You can add it to your cart and check out. So it's really easy to register. And on the JN Software webpage, you can access our blog, which has great articles, fantastic articles in here. And at the bottom of this webpage, so we have working from home resources, which is good at this time. We have a 7-part series on things like, well, here's your part 4, managers, how can you support your staff while they're working remotely, how to make your online training successful. But at the bottom, you can actually register for the newsletter so you won't miss anything down here. And we have Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. If you follow us, you'll get tips and tricks and articles, and it's absolutely fantastic. Free resources, the webinars, of course, so free webinars. And we do have upcoming webinars. I know you've registered for this, but we have things like making business intelligence simple, Microsoft Project, going beyond Excel. So lots of stuff. And over here on the CompuEase website, same kind of thing. Our technical training, our professional skills training. You can go right to the course list, maybe specifically Excel. My computer's a little bit slow today. I'll just show this to you and then I'll get to your questions. Oh, my computer's being very slow. But this would take you to a landing page that gives you all the courses in Excel. There are register links, same kind of thing. Yeah, it's just taking too long. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Word because I'm going to take your questions right now. And I know, Chanel, you had that question about, let's see, where is it? Is this sequential, like heading 1 is the main heading, heading 2 is the next one? Yeah, heading 3 and so on. Yes, so heading 1 will be usually bigger, bolder, so therefore your main headings. So for example, if you were typing a book about dogs, and you were talking about poodles. So poodles will be a main heading. And then if you split it up into standard poodles, miniature poodles, you know, that kind of thing, they would be subheadings. So those would be heading 2s. So they're slightly smaller. And then you might even have subheadings. I don't know, maybe you'll get into black standard poodles, white standard poodles, brown standard poodles. I don't know. I'm coming up with this off the top of my head. Those might be heading 3 topics. So they are sequential. So you would have a heading 1 as a main topic. Subtopics would be heading 2s. And if I scroll down here to the next page, writing clearly, I'm changing the subject. That's another heading 1. And then there are 2 subcategories under it, which are heading 2s. And then I might change the subject again and talk about formatting text. That's a heading 1. So yeah, they are sequential. And you would never skip a heading. You wouldn't apply a heading 1 and then jump to a heading 3. It's not per page or section because it's totally up to you how you organize your document. So I have a heading 1 here with 2 heading 2s, but then I could start, I just happened to decide to start this designing accessible documents, talking about writing clearly to make your documents accessible. I could have started it right here underneath lists, but it is a new topic and it goes back to a heading 1. So it's just if it's a new topic and a subtopic under a topic, it is not page specific or section specific. It's just main topics, subtopics, subtopics. What would I use for the overall heading? Like a title up here, designing accessible documents. Yeah, okay, so for that, I used the style called title. There's actually a style called title built in. So you don't even have to create your heading styles. They're there, heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, heading 4. There already is a title style. There are styles for things like quotations. There are a whole bunch built in. You can create your own. It's just that screen readers are designed to understand specific names of styles. So it's looking for a style called heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, title. Those are kind of styles that are always built into things like Word documents and Excel files. So what I do is if I want a different look and feel, I modify the heading 1. So I go in and I say, well, I want it to be black and I want it to be Arial font, but I don't create my own heading style. I just modify heading 1. Which, of course, we would teach you how to do all of that in the course. Oh, you're so welcome, Chanel. Is there anything else? Any other questions? I know we've run a couple of minutes over. I think we have, Melanie was watching this too. Did you have any questions, Melanie? Or you're good? This is just the tip of the iceberg. Just the tip. You're good? Okay, then that's the end of our webinar. Chanel, like I said, you'll get a link for the webinar that goes up on YouTube probably within 24 hours. And you can watch the video again if you want to refer to this. And then we offer the 2-day training coming up September 28th and 29th. So take care, everybody. Have a good afternoon. And take care of yourself.